from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Happy Monday. It's great to be back with you guys. Welcome to the Monday night edition of the program. If you want to join our late night national town hall conversation, give us a call, 833-482-5337, 8334-Valdez. I want to thank my buddy, it's Dom Time, Dom Giordano, WPHT, for sitting in for a few days. And we're back at it. So much has happened during the week. Of course, you heard the big news over the last weekend, or right before the last weekend, I should say, with the verdict of the Trump trial. And this was obviously a very big deal. Not something that was entirely unexpected. I think some of us were thinking there might be a hung jury. But if there wasn't a hung jury, of course, there was going to be a conviction. I don't think there was a shot in HELL that we were going to get anything other than a conviction in Blue York City. But that is where we are today. And I've got to tell you, this is the reaction that I've got from those around me was quite astounding. It really was. Now, check this out. You guys have heard me talk about my buddy, and he's remained nameless, and he probably will continue to remain nameless, but you know his story. He is a refugee from Cuba that left on a jet ski from La Habana and landed in Key West. Made his way to the United States, has become an American citizen. He's been here for a number of years, 20 years. And him and his family, they ran a Cuban restaurant that they sold last summer, coming up on a year that they sold the restaurant. And I used to get my coffee there, my cafecito, some of the other little things that I like to get, fried snacks, and of course, certain meals. And this guy called me the other day. He's my buddy. We always chop it up about politics, and he called me, and he tells me in Spanish, he says, "Richie, I can't believe it. You were right. This country's starting to look a lot like Cuba." I used to tell him that, and he'd say, "You're out of your mind. This is a country where you can invest your money however you want, open any business you want. You can do absolutely anything you want to do." He didn't believe that any of this stuff was real. When I said they're coming after Trump as a political persecution. Trump is a political prisoner. But no, he didn't believe me, and finally did. He finally agreed. It took him 3 or 4 years to come around, but now he sees what's going on. Why? Because he said, "I was a lawyer in Cuba, and as a lawyer, I can tell you that there's no case against Trump here. That even in the worst case scenario, this would have been a fine, not some sort of multi-week televised trial." And he was really shaking his head, and I could tell he was really lamenting over this, and it was because of the perversion that's been done to the justice system, to the fact that precedent has been created, yet again, for something so trivial. That is the sad part. That is the part that is eroding our justice system. That is the part that is the true threat to democracy. And that is exactly what brought this guy over, who can't stand Trump in the least. And it didn't bring him over to the Trump column either. But he did say, he said, people are going to pave the way for Donald Trump to regain the White House. And he followed it with saying, and rightfully so, because these people went too far. They overplayed their hand. Now, I'm waiting for him. I'm waiting for him to say, "Richie, all right, you're right. I'm coming on board. I'm going to help put Trump back in the White House." I don't know. I'm not going to hold my breath. I might turn blue and pass out if I held my breath, so I won't do that. But that's what's going on with El Trompito. And we're going to talk about El Trompito because, again, right after that, there was record-breaking fundraising that happened. He was in the city on Friday. I was in the city on Friday, too. I want to take a moment to wish America's mayor, Rudy Giuliani, a very, very happy birthday. I was with him on Friday celebrating his birthday in New York City with a few people, with Lydia Serrani, John Tobacco, a lot of really good people, Dr. Maria Ryan. And I just wanted to take a moment to wish America's Mayor, Rudy Giuliani, a very happy, happy birthday. We'll probably have him on soon to discuss his take on what's going on with the Trump persecution, as he's part of the persecution and being persecuted himself. But there's other news out there, and we're going to get to all of it. You've got corrupt Fulton County DA Funny Willis. Yes, Funny Willis is about to face a hearing on her removal from the Trump case. That's about time. Dr. Fauci was grilled over his pandemic response before the House Oversight Committee. I got a couple of clips on that, and we're going to play those around, I'm going to say 10:40-ish, 10:50-ish, so that you can hear exactly what Dr. Fauci had to say, and more importantly, what Marjorie Taylor Greene had to say, because she really let loose, telling everybody exactly how she felt. And there's a bunch more out there that I want to get to. Now, let me see. Maybe I do have time to do this, Marjorie Taylor Greene here. She was responding to a reporter who was asking her questions and getting her reaction to Congressman Jamie Raskin saying that she and other MAGA Trump supporters are worshiping Donaldus Magnus El Trompito, the 45th president of these United States. Listen to this.
In that room? No, absolutely not. I mean, everything I said is correct. It's how the American people feel. It's what we know to be a fact. It's all the evidence has been proven true. We have Jamie Raskin in there accusing us of worshiping Trump, worshiping a convicted felon. He is a convicted. Well, yeah, so is George Floyd. And everybody, and you all too, the media worship George Floyd. Democrats worship George Floyd. There were riots burning down the country over George Floyd, and Raskin is in there saying we worship him. Excuse me, let me correct you, and this is really important. I don't worship, I worship God. God. And Jesus is my savior. I don't worship President Trump. And I'm really sick and tired of the annex I have to deal with constantly from the Democrats. So that's what we just went through in there. And then they're sitting there, they can attack my character all day long. What's his face in there, whoever was talking last was calling me insane, but yet we can't say, oh, they're attacking my character. Oh no, it's nonstop BS and annex. You want to know why? The Democrats don't have anything. They're responsible for the lockdowns, forced vaccinations, kids being forced to stay home, people committing suicide, and all the horrors that this country lived through during COVID. Fauci belongs in prison. He should be tried for mass murder, and he should be tried for crimes against humanity. That's how I feel after that hearing.
That is Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene from Georgia, letting loose and telling everyone how she feels. And, you know, I shared this on social media, and the caption that I put was, then they wonder why people like her. That's why. Because she's so authentic, she's so raw, and she's so passionate about things that I think to many people really matter. We're in a trial, we're in a hearing to hear Dr. Fauci's testimony on why he made the decisions that he made in his response to the pandemic as part of the House's oversight function. And her colleagues on the left, all they can do is take pot shots. I don't think the American people are interested. I think people are absolutely disgusted with what happened during the pandemic. People have come around to the idea that my tinfoil hat was a fashion statement, right? It didn't make me a lunatic, crazy conspiracy theorist. And the reality is COVID was something similar to the flu. I think the CDC eventually agreed to that, something that Donaldus Magnus El Trompito, the 45th president of these United States, said, and he was ridiculed for it, called it the China virus. He was right about that. I think Trump has been right on a lot of things. And I think that's part of the reason why people are starting to support him as much as they are, in particular financially. Wait till you hear these financial numbers, these fundraising numbers that have come out of the Trump campaign over the weekend, over the last month, and in particular and since the end of the trial. So keep it locked right here. Coming back, we're scheduled to have senior advisor from the Trump campaign join us. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, so a lot of news coming out of New York City regarding somebody I like to call El Trompito, Donaldus Magnus, the 45th president of these United States, El Presidente. Now, of course, last week we heard the guilty verdict. The week before that, it was the huge, absolutely huge rally in the Bronx on Thursday. And at the rally, I bumped into senior advisor Jason Miller, and we invited him on the program. He's with us now. Jason Miller, welcome to the program, sir.
Rich, it is great to be with you, and thanks again for the invite.
My pleasure, sir. Now, check this out, Jason Miller. I want you to hear George Stephanopoulos. I have a quick clip of this, talking to Will Scharf, attorney for the Trump team, letting him, really trying to fact-check him and say, or I should say censor him, and saying that Biden has absolutely nothing to do with this Trump trial. Check this out.
Of course, the Attorney General in Manhattan has nothing to do with the Department of Justice. Finally, what do you expect from the sentencing process?
I vehemently disagree that the district attorney in New York was not politically motivated here, and I vehemently disagree that President Biden and his political allies aren't up to their necks in this prosecution. I think the fact
there's
that
no
the Biden
evidence of that, sir. There's no. I'm not going to let you continue to say that. There's just zero evidence of that.
Well, how about the fact that Matthew Colangelo was standing over Alvin Bragg's shoulder when he announced this verdict? I mean, Colangelo was the #3 official in the Biden Department of Justice who suddenly disappears and shows up as an assistant district attorney right as Trump's case in New York starts to proceed.
After
you want to talk about political you want to talk about political coordination?
This has nothing to do with,
right
this has nothing to do, no, it's not. This has nothing to do with President Biden. Do you want to answer the question about the sentencing process or not?
I completely disagree that this has nothing to do with President Biden.
Now, good for Will Scharf for sticking to his guns there and not letting George Stephanopoulos push him around. Jason Miller, how do you weigh in on that?
Yeah, so Will is able to say certain things that I'm not because of the gag order, the unconstitutional gag order that's in place with regard to President Trump. So there are certain things that Will said that I'll let that go and stand on its own. But let's go and unpack this for a moment here. So this zombie case, which is literally what they called it, the SDNY passed on it. The FEC, the Federal Election Commission, passed on it. The Manhattan DA's office passed on it. And then Alvin Bragg, in fact, himself passed on it. And then he comes back to it. And they bring it up in a presidential campaign year, only after President Trump had announced that he was going to be running for president. So you don't exactly have to be Nostradamus to kind of figure this one out. You don't have to be Columbo on the scene to see exactly what's going on. And also just magically at the same time, you get this deranged Jack Smith, what he's trying to do in multiple jurisdictions. You also see what's going on with Fonnie Wade or Fonnie Willis. Sometimes I get the two mixed up in Atlanta. And you realize this my good friend Steve Bannon always says, no such thing as conspiracies, but in politics, there's no such thing as coincidences.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And, you know, Stephen Miller, this to me is a great segue to talk about some numbers I've seen, right? I've heard from the campaign earlier today, I think $120 million were raised in the month of May. If that's wrong, you let me know. Then we've got, since the trial started, $70 million since this Thursday's verdict, $39 million of which was raised in the first 10 minutes following the verdict. To me, and then I hear there was so much support that the website crashed. Is any of this stuff true?
Yeah, it's a record-setting amount, not just within the first 24 hours, but for the entire month that we've now raised. And here's a critical point. 1/3 of it is all brand new donors. And so that shows that people are coming off the sidelines. They're seeing it and saying, hey, this is not the America that I want to live in. I do not want my country to turn into a banana republic. I'm going to put my money where my mouth is and go and do something about this. And I think this is really where Biden and his campaign made a mistake. They're so desperate to try to change the subject away from inflation, immigration. They literally call a press event and bring that washed-up loser Robert De Niro down to the courthouse and do that last Tuesday. And then, of course, Joe Biden himself goes out on Friday, and supposedly he was talking about some kind of international issue. And then we see when he's asked the question, are you behind this? He looks over his shoulder and gives that evil smile. And then even today, where Joe Biden is doing a fundraiser with some of his wealthy donors in Connecticut, and he starts attacking President Trump, calling him a convicted felon. Well, you know what, Joe? On November 5th, the Biden family criminal enterprise is going to end. No longer will your family be soliciting millions, if not tens of millions of dollars from countries like China and Russia and Ukraine. And after November 5th, never again will someone with the last name Biden offer up government access in exchange for personal money. That's never going to happen again after November 5th.
The Biden crime family is going to have to close the bag, and the bag man, Hunter Biden, is going to have to find a new gig. He's got a trial, by the way. Now, Jason Miller is a senior advisor to the Trump campaign, the last 3 Trump campaigns, and everybody's favorite, a fan favorite here, we call him Adam Schiff for Brains. He was on CNN yesterday, and yeah, that's him, Adam Schiff for Brains. He says that everyone needs to call Trump a convicted felon. Obviously, President Biden's taken the lead on that. And what's your thought on that?
Well, again, they will do anything to try to distract away from the fact that they've done their best to ruin this country with regard to inflation, with regard to illegal immigration. You look at the interest rates of what's happening. You see the chaos in Israel and other countries around the world. They are so desperate to hang on to power, so desperate to try to beat President Trump and anyone who actually will challenge the status quo, they will do anything. They will weaponize our judicial system. They will launch lawfare against a political opponent. So we used to look at countries, say, whether it be Brazil or maybe it's Pakistan or maybe it's Congo or other places all around the world, and we would laugh at them and say, oh, we're not like those countries. We're not these banana republics who there's no such thing as law and order. People just weaponize their governments and weaponize the judicial systems. But now, sadly, they look at us and laugh. And that's what I think is really sad.
Sad indeed. Folks, we're on with Jason Miller, senior advisor to the Trump campaign. And you mentioned a moment ago that Biden was meeting with some wealthy donors. But in fact, some wealthy donors of Trump's have recently come out of the woodwork. Miriam Adelson, in particular, pledging over $100 million to a Trump super PAC. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so we're starting to see the big money come off the sidelines, and we're seeing people who maybe they've been with President Trump in the past, maybe they have not been with him in the past. We're seeing people say, hey, we want to protect our country, we want to save our country, and we're going to put our money where our mouth is. And they look and see what Soros is doing. They look and see what the Arabella advisors are doing, all kind of the dark money groups that are supporting crooked Joe Biden and the rest of the Democrats. And everybody is coming in now and saying, we have to win this race. This is so much bigger even than President Trump. This is even bigger than our movement. This is about anyone who is concerned about our country. And people realize that they're not going to stop with President Trump. If they're able to get away with doing this against President Trump, they will weaponize every aspect of government, every aspect of our legal system. Everyone who's listening to this show right now, they're going to come after you.
Without a doubt. That's why we have 88 million new IRS agents, and they're trying to get their hands in my pocket, your pocket, and Jason Miller's pocket. He's coming right back for another segment. We're going to talk about the Secret Service. Is Trump going to prison? That's what the left would like. Don't go anywhere, folks. It's me, Rich Valdez, coming right back with our guest, Jason Miller.
Call screener, who is a budding radio star, by the way. Richie Valdez is terrific.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
So a lot of people have suggested that there are a range of factors that would make it difficult to put the system has not been tested in this way. Do you agree with that it would be difficult or nearly impossible for the law enforcement institutions to put him in actual jail?
No, they would just put him in a double wide somewhere out near the fence, out in the grass. And he would eat there, he'd shower there, he'd exercise there, he'd be away, as Danya Perry said, from general population, but it's obviously doable.
That is James Comey, former director of the FBI, on MSNBC yesterday, saying, no, it's not too difficult to put El Trompito Donaldus Magnus, the 45th president of these United States, El Presidente. It's not that hard to put him in jail. Our guest is Jason Miller, Jason Miller, senior advisor to the Trump campaign. Jason Miller, when you hear James Comey say, no, we could just put a double wide on the White House lawn, what's your reaction to that?
So to think that this man was once the director of the FBI, that is exactly why President Trump fired this man years ago. It's exactly why we have to root out the deep state. We have to get rid of these people who think they're above the law, who believe in weaponizing our judicial system, who believe in lawfare, believe about persecuting their political opponents. Literally, this is the person who is the head of the FBI. So when you talk about what needs to be reformed in Washington, how we need to root out these people who believe that they can just go and operate in this manner, look no further than James Comey. And this is quite stunning to hear from a former FBI director.
Yeah, and that's really the part that sticks out to me, right? I know that James Comey's a hack, but the fact that he was former director of the FBI, I think you have to, at least one would hope and expect that he'd have a little bit more couth and not be so reckless with his commentary. But yet here he is saying, no, sure, making these statements as if we have done this before, as if there's precedent for this. As far as I know, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe we've ever put a double wide on the White House lawn to keep somebody in lockdown. Have you?
No. And the other thing, too, is, this isn't like it's a new opinion from James Comey. This is what he's always believed. Now he just feels emboldened to be able to say it out loud in front of everybody. And he believes that he has a left of center audience is going to applaud this and say, way to go, Jim. No, this is why people like this need to be removed from government. They shouldn't be in there. And it's quite scary to think that someone like Comey survived so many years in the FBI without someone saying, hey, this is not what our law enforcement is supposed to be like. This is not what our justice system is supposed to be like. But yet Jim Comey made it quite a long time and made it all the way to the top.
Right. So it's indicative to me that the rot or the problem that we have within the FBI, within so much of our federal bureaucracy, is so much deeper than many people might imagine.
Yeah, it really is. And we're going to need to go through and hold accountable people at every single level. And we can go all the way back to the beginning. Let's go back to 2016, where Joe Biden and a number of folks sat in the Oval Office and talked about using the Logan Act to try to go and spy on President Trump's campaign, first going after General Flynn and then other people, and the spying that they did. Think about Russia, Ukraine, impeachment hoax 1, impeachment hoax 2. And then think about in 2020 what they did with manipulating social media to say that people couldn't talk about the Hunter Biden laptop, which, of course, turned out to be completely true. So these, whether it be the bureaucrats, whether it be the politicized members of law enforcement, they've been doing this ever since President Trump came on the scene. So that's what we know about. What we don't know about is what were they doing in years before that? That's the scary part.
Yeah, I agree with that. And Jason Miller, I want to get your sense. Obviously, you're on the ground. You're traveling with El Trompito. You're going to places he's not going to handle stuff for the campaign. It seems to me the polls are out. At least there's two polls out, one showing a little bit more than the other, that this really hasn't moved the needle much for the Trump-hating Republicans that are not on board. And I don't think they'll ever be on board. But what's the sense you're getting with Trump being a convicted felon and the impact that's made?
Well, if anything, it's made President Trump's support base stronger. So President Trump is doing much stronger with Republicans than Joe Biden is with Democrats. In fact, Harry Enten, who does the stats and the demography,
the analyst for CNN.
Yes, a little bit of a quirky guy, but he came out and said that President Trump is at a record level of strength, whereas Joe Biden's at a record level of weakness within his own party. You think about all the people who are taking the protest votes in Michigan and Kentucky and other places in that Democratic primary. So President Trump is doing great when it comes to the Republican Party. With independents, President Trump is leading by polls usually range between 9 and 12 points. somewhere in that range where he has the lead. We see record numbers of Black Americans, Latino Americans, Asian Americans coming over to President Trump's side and saying that they don't want to be a part of the Democrat Party because they've taken it for granted. And quite frankly, the Republican Party now stands for the party of the working class. So things are all moving in President Trump's direction. A couple of polls have come out. So the Daily Mail had a poll that came out said that President Trump, his favorable ratings are now 6 points higher ever since the rigged Biden trial conviction came out. The Daily Express showed that more Americans are now increasingly willing to support President Trump than even before the trial. And then we see even new numbers come out today showing that President Trump has grown 2 points on the head-to-head ballot test with Joe Biden. So all the numbers show that President Trump is continuing to grow. So at this point, if they tried to send if the Democrats and this crooked judge tried to send President Trump anywhere, I think the only place they'd be sending him to is the Oval Office in 1600 Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Now, check this out. I've looked at the last polls, the last ones I saw. 6 out of 7 battleground states, Trump was up. Then I saw a couple of new ones come out that show that Trump is within single digits in New York and potentially New Jersey. What's up with that, Jason Miller?
So it's quite remarkable. So President Trump is actually ahead by 2 points in Minnesota, which no Republican has won in well over generations. Yeah, it's going back quite a ways. So no Republicans won Minnesota in a long time. We're down by 5 points in New Jersey, which is considered bright blue. We're down by 7 points in New York, which again considered bright blue. Washington State, which is a state that Republican has not won in a heck of a long time. I believe it was 88 was last time someone won it in Washington State. We're only down by single digits there. And so all these states are starting to move in President Trump's direction. And here's the thing that so many people are saying, we're seeing this whether it be anecdotally or we're seeing empirically with the polling. People are concerned about inflation. They're concerned about interest rates. They're concerned about immigration. They're concerned about Israel and the chaos that's going on globally. And every time Joe Biden and the Democrats try to distract from that, then people say, hey, we understand what's going on here. We're ticked off that the country's going to hell. It's all Joe Biden's fault. And if you want to go and try to pin it on Trump, maybe we got to bring him back and bring back that Trump economy.
Amen to that. Now, Jason Miller, I want you to share with President Trump a message from me that he's welcome to come on this program anytime. We have 5 million of my closest friends that are listening every night, and we wish both of you guys Godspeed as you forge ahead.
Well, thanks very much. I appreciate it. I'll definitely give that message to President Trump. Thank you for your words of encouragement. And everybody out there who went to DonaldJTrump.com and made their voices heard this past week, ever since this rigged Biden outcome from this trial in New York. Thank you. We're setting records, and that's going to help carry President Trump across the finish line. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Now, Jason Miller, if people want to stick their hand in their pocket and send Trump a low-dollar donation, a big-dollar donation, where do they go? How do they do it?
Absolutely. So DonaldJTrump.com, and you can sign up to help financially. You can sign up to help volunteer. You can sign up to get a yard sign, put it in your yard, get one of the banners, one of the flags to put out there and let people know that you are not going to go quietly into the night. You're going to stand up and fight for our republic, fight for our country, fight for our Constitution, and we're very glad to have your support.
Amen to that. Jason Miller, Senior Advisor to the Trump campaign. You're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. Keep up the good work, sir.
Thank you, sir.
You bet. All right, folks, we're coming right back. We're going to discuss what went down with Dr. Fauci on Capitol Hill and more. Don't move a muscle.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Rich Valdez, who again will do a fine job, and I know you'll enjoy listening to him.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back, amigos. It is the Monday night edition of the program. We're live, we're national, right from New York. I am Rich Valdez. Happy to be back with you guys. 833-482-5337, 833-4Valdez is the phone number. Let's go to Bill. Bill's calling us from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, listening to KDKA, America's oldest radio station. Bill, go right ahead.
Hi, Rich. Hey, I called Dom, the guy that was, standing in for you on Friday. My phone died. But this is what I wanted to tell him, so I'll tell you.
Sure.
All right. I live in Pittsburgh. He said he was coming from Philadelphia. Okay. There are two big cities, two great cities, however you look at it. We don't like them that much. I guess they don't like it. I don't know. But anyways, what I was going to do was try to figure out, can we figure out a way to unite these two cities? Because when you look at the maps, after, the voting's done, and you see all the red throughout Pennsylvania, the blue is just around Pittsburgh, Allegheny County. The blue is around Philadelphia, and that county's over there. We have to figure out a way to take this state and find something in common.
Right. Well, you know what's interesting? That's not the only state that's like that, right? New York is like that. In many ways, New Jersey's like that, too. New Jersey's not necessarily such a blue state. It's that, you take Camden, you take Newark, you put them together, and boom, you've got, more people in those two areas that vote Democrat than you have, in most places across the street, across the state, rather, that are voting Republican, or at least, it comes across that way. But the reality is when you look at the entirety of the state, most of these counties will lean Republican. And it's just a handful of blue counties that tip the scale. And that's the case in a lot of places. And that's what they're trying to do in Texas. And I did a Newsmax segment recently, and this is exactly what I was discussing. And there's a great book called The Four Horsemen. And it's about turning Colorado blue, which was once red about 20 years ago, and how they made it turn blue and the issues that they went on and how they did it. And back then it was I think he was a state rep named Jared Polis, and then he became a congressman, and then he became governor and ran for the Senate, and he's just all over the place. And he's running the show there, Jared Polis, for sure. And I can tell you that this is a well-documented plan. It's not called the Four Horsemen. It's called the Blueprint. And they reference these gentlemen that they call the Four Horsemen. And really is an interesting take. And they laid out exactly how they were going to turn Colorado blue, and they did it. And that's what we see in so many states. And it's an active, I'm going to use the word active measure, but that's exactly what it is. And I get what you're saying. You want to reach out to these two communities, Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, because we can turn Pennsylvania blue. The good news is that Pennsylvania or turn it red, I should say, from blue. Pennsylvania has gone red on many occasions. It's not always blue. It's always been somewhat of a purple state that kind of went either way. And I think that's going to be the case this time around, too. I think that there's a ton of people actually spent the weekend in Pennsylvania, and there was nothing but Trump signs. I didn't see a single sign for Biden anywhere. I was in the Pocono area. So I think you're on to something, and I think Americans are on to something. And I truly believe that there is a lot of momentum, not only for Trump, but really against Biden, against the Democrats, against turning a blind eye. There's a clip of audio that I haven't played yet, and maybe we'll get to it a little bit later, but it's of a retiring state senator in California who basically says, look, I'm retiring, but we can't keep protecting people that want to purchase children, right? And this was a law against human trafficking that the Democrats fought viciously in California. And one would think, why would Democrats fight against a human trafficking law? Well, the reality is they did. And this was problematic for this one particular Democrat that had the courage to speak up because she doesn't need to be reelected. And God bless her for it. But so we'll talk about that a little later. But yeah, Bill, excellent point. Well made and well taken. Bill in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania on KDKA. All right, folks, I'm going to take a quick pause right here. We're going to come right back and give you the scoop on exactly what Anthony Fauci had to say on Capitol Hill.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
So you might recall Congressman Richard McCormick. He's been on this program a number of times. A Republican from Georgia. He served in Afghanistan, and then he served on the front lines of COVID as a ER physician, what he is by trade. And he's in Congress now and had the opportunity to grill Anthony Fauci, Dr. Fauci, who I like to call the Fauchster. And the Fauchster and Dr. McCormick had a back and forth that I think is really worth listening to. Check this out.
You said in an interview that you gave as part of an audiobook written by Michael Spector that you believed an institutional should make it hard for people to live their lives so they'd feel pressured to get vaccinated. Could we run the audio clip on that, please?
You think can be done about it? I have to say that I don't see a big solution other than some sort of mandatory vaccination. I know federal officials don't like to use that term.
Once people feel empowered and protected legally, you are going to have schools, universities, and colleges are going to say, you want to come to this college, buddy? You're going to get vaccinated. Lady, you're going to get vaccinated.
Yeah.
Big corporations like Amazon and Facebook and all of those others are going to say, you want to work for us, you get vaccinated. And it's been proven that when you make it difficult for people in their lives, they lose their ideological bullshit and they get vaccinated.
Thank you. Are all objections to COVID vaccinations ideological bullshit, Dr. Fauci?
No, they're not, and that's not what I was referring to.
Well, in reference to making it hard for people to get education, traveling, working, I'd say it very much was in context.
Now, Dr. Fauci, again, this is his definition of ideological BS. He goes on. He goes on and he discusses what he says is whether the vaccine prevented the actual transmission of COVID. He says it's complicated. Listen to this.
Did the COVID vaccine stop transmission of the virus?
That is a complicated issue because in the beginning, the first iteration of the vaccines did have an effect, not 100%, not a high effect. They did prevent infection and subsequently, obviously, transmission. However, it's important to point out something that we did not know early on that became evident as the months went by, is that the durability of protection against infection and hence transmission was relatively limited, whereas the duration of protection against severe disease, hospitalization, and deaths was more prolonged. We did not know that in the beginning. In the beginning, it was felt that, in fact, it did prevent infection and thus transmission. But that was proven as time went by to not be a durable effect.
So Fauci says in the beginning, this vaccine worked great in subsequently slowing down transmission and infection. I remember them saying that, but I remember other doctors like Jay Bhattacharya and others that were out there saying, no, that doesn't work that way. This isn't here to do that. And it never did. In fact, everything they said that it wouldn't do, it didn't do. And yet, I'm the one with the tinfoil hat. Oh, Dr. Fauci, I think I agree with Marjorie Taylor Greene. This guy needs a trip to the slammer, not Trump. Anyway, folks, we're going to talk about the LGBTQ parades that were interrupted by pro-Hamas agitators. We're going to do that straight ahead. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Monday night edition of the program. We're live, we're national, happy to be with you. And the phone number, 833-482-5337-8334 Valdez. If you want to join us on our late night national town hall conversation, feel free to give a call. And Mexico has elected a left-wing scientist, former mayor of Mexico City, Claudia Sheinbaum, as their new president. And this is a big deal, I suppose. I don't think they've had a woman president before. First woman president in more than their 200 years of independence. And she's 61 years old. She was the former Mexico City mayor, a lifelong leftist, ran a disciplined campaign, according to the AP, capitalizing on Lopez Obrador's popularity before emerging victorious in last night's vote. So that's the new president of Mexico. Now, what else we got here? That's a big deal. Fulton County DA, the ever corrupt, in my opinion, Funny Willis, is facing a hearing on being removed from the Trump case. Can't believe that wasn't done automatically, but that's how it goes. And let's see. What else we got here? We talked a little bit about Fauci getting grilled in front of the House Oversight Committee. That is a thing. That did happen. And we've also got some development over the weekend. And this is something I really want to get into because I thought it was remarkable. Whenever you see things coming apart at the seams, and I guess like my ideological opponents probably think that if you've seen one conservative, you've seen them all. I tend to think that for most left-wing radicals myself. But it's fascinating to see the clashes that occurred across the country with respect to what the LGBTQ plus, I think I said that right, community had to face when pro-Hamas, pro-Palestine protesters showed up and blockaded them from parading. So just imagine that. It's the gay pride parade. People are marching down streets like the one in Philadelphia, for example, and they happened all over the country. And you've got these people with the keffiyeh, the traditional Middle Eastern scarf around the head that is representative of the pro-Palestinian movement, blocking them. But the images I saw were it was a split down the middle. These were not just regular people. You saw these men that were wearing leather and chains, and as you would see at many gay pride parades, and they were wearing this keffiyeh, and they were stopping the other gays, their gay colleagues, from walking down the street and marching in this parade. So you had the pro-Hamas folks against the pro-LGBTQ folks that were trying to march, and they were not in solidarity at all. We got a little clip of audio from the Philly parade. Listen to this. They're shouting, "Palestine will live forever." There's no pride in genocide is how they end that. And again, just shocking to me to see these, again, gay people with the keffiyeh blocking the other gay people wrapped in their rainbow colors. I thought they were all on the same side, when in reality, I think you would find that the folks in Palestine probably don't really appreciate the entire pride movement. But I want to get to the bottom of this, because I think we went from college campuses to gay pride parades with this protest. And I want to bring in our guest because Jenn Kabbany is editor-in-chief at the College Fix, and she's our guest right now. Jenn Kabbany, welcome back.
Hey, Rich.
How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Now, I know you guys always have your finger on the pulse of what's going on at the College Fix, and I'm sure this is an issue that you guys are following. Tell me, what was your reaction to seeing? I got to tell you, I honestly was surprised to see this happening over the weekend. What say you?
I first want to say that while queers may be for Palestine, Palestine is most definitely not for queers. And so the cognitive dissonance that these protesters have, thinking that they would be welcome and embraced in open arms, walking around, cross-dressing or in leather or what have you in the streets of the Palestinian-controlled areas, wouldn't happen exactly. They would be, I don't actually know what would happen. I know in the Middle East they still execute gays in some parts of the region. So, this all boils down to, trying to capitalize on the activism, get their point across, have some fun, shout down everybody else. I mean, they've been interrupting graduations. They've been storming buildings. They've been, camping on quads. They've been basically trying to take over the entire operation for their cause.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And this is a point that I think can't be made enough times, that the issue at hand with the Queers for Palestine movement is an interesting one, and one that I guess I can understand it in some ways, where I support tax cuts. Sometimes these tax cuts don't necessarily apply to me because I don't make enough money to qualify for some of those tax cuts, but ultimately I think everybody benefits from those tax cuts, and maybe that's how they're looking at this movement. The issue is, like you said, I think that there is definitely no question on the other side. It's not going to happen. In fact, it's dangerous. So why would one engage in such a risky proposition?
Well, I think there's a combination of participants in these pro-Palestinian protests. There's some true believers. There's some useful idiots. There's some, Occupy Wall Streeters. I mean, if you look at some of the mugshots, half the kids are white. There's some people that just like to get in on a protest. It's like a college rite of passage. So it's really a amalgamation of different people from different walks of life that just like to get involved in this. Like I said, there is a faction that are actually true believers. But this is the cause du jour that we're dealing with right now. Of course, it centers on the whole oppression Olympics. And so, if you are there's so much embracing of homosexuality in many Christian religions or denominations, and yet Christians are still considered enemy number one because they are supposedly on the top of the oppressor pyramid chain, whereas in Palestinian and Arab-controlled Muslim regions where they would actually possibly execute you for being homosexual, they're out there marching in the streets and celebrating them and demanding rights and what. I don't want to get into the whole Israel-Hamas war, but I'm just saying they're not really thinking through the entire premise here.
Yeah, that's for sure, folks. We're on with Jenn Kabbany. She's editor-in-chief at the College Fix. And I'm looking at the College Fix, and I see that for the first time in 50 years, Stanford University faculty has approved a free speech statement. But what I find more interesting is that a math professor was fired after criticizing slavery reparations, and he's now in a legal battle against St. Joe's. And it's funny how one professor might not have free speech rights, while others professors are, purporting to have free speech. So when we come back, Jenn Kabbany, I want you to explain a couple of those stories to us so that our listeners are up to speed on what you guys are covering over at thecollegefix.com. And folks, again, we're coming right back with Jenn Kabbany, editor-in-chief at thecollegefix.com.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833 Valdez. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4Valdez. That's Valdez with an S.
My hands across America to the liberty-loving Latino, Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back, amigos. And while they've got a gag order on President Trump saying he can't speak during his trial, and a gag order which is still in place, by the way, until the sentencing and whatnot, there's rumors that they're trying to get Trump into Rikers Island. I actually met a Rikers Island person not that long ago and had a brief conversation with this corrections person, and they said that there has been discussion with the Secret Service and people on the Democrat side. There's something called the Disgraced Act, and they're looking to revoke any type of federal protection from anybody that's labeled a felon. That's Benny Thompson. I'll get into that in a little bit more straight ahead. But make no mistake, there is an active effort to put Trump on Rikers Island behind bars before Election Day in an attempt to stymie the election. Crazy. Now, while Trump has no free speech, you've got the faculty at Stanford approving a free speech statement for the first time in 50 years. But at St. Joe's, that's not necessarily the case for a math professor who was fired after he criticized slavery reparations. And now this guy's in a legal battle. Jenn Kabbany is the editor-in-chief at the College Fix. Jenn Kabbany, welcome back. Tell us about these.
Yeah, so this poor guy at St. Joseph's University in Philadelphia, he had this private Twitter account. He was tweeting, things that obviously go against the progressive grain. And one of his former students from 4 years prior, who got an F in his class, found out that he was the guy behind this Twitter account, X account now, and complained to the administration. She'd already graduated. And the administration said, well, you need some corroborating evidence. So she went on social media and got her friends to all, come on, let's complain against this guy. So they did. Of course, he was immediately suspended without due process. And long story short, he did end up getting fired. And the article explains all that. But it just goes to show you how. Now that was in the wake of George Floyd and everything, but right. He's still fighting. He's still fighting for vindication. He's still fighting. He wants punitive damages because they basically ruined his life. He was a baseball coach. He taught there for like almost 20 years. Everybody loved him, and just one claim of racism, and boom, you're gone.
Yeah, maybe he should hire a lawyer from Washington where you don't have to pass the bar anymore, because that that might help him out. And I remember when that came out, I thought that was very funny. But you guys have a report on there that I thought was interesting, that you've got some conservative groups taking a libertarian approach to this, saying it's a great alternative to the bar exam and a victory for limited government. Tell us about that.
Well, that's the thing about conservatives is they do want to err on the side of no regulation, and God bless them for that. But you do need to make sure that people have some measure of intelligence before you let them be lawyers. So that's all I got to say about that.
Well, I'm thinking of becoming a lawyer in Washington. That's what I'm thinking.
There you go. Well, I live in California, and they, I'm sure that they're going to cancel the LSAT if they haven't already. I'm trying to remember if they had. I know there was discussions about it, but that just goes to show you. After hundreds of universities also said you didn't need to, show us your SAT scores or your ACT scores anymore. But they quickly learned. Actually, I don't know if you saw, but Harvard and Yale and MIT and a bunch of universities reversed that and are now requiring the SAT again because they realized, oh, you know what? This is actually a great indicator of whether you're going to be successful at our school, and so we actually want to see you. So they've all reversed it now. So. That's how liberal policies go. They implement these liberal policies. We have to live under it for however many long. They realize how bad it is, and then they reverse it.
Oh, boy. Jenn Kabbany, editor-in-chief of thecollegefix.com. And I see so many good articles. I always do on the College Fix. What's on your desk now, and what can folks look forward to reading in tomorrow's edition?
Well, I do want to mention you'd seen that Stanford article, and the funny thing about that is Stanford is a train wreck. Okay, so you might recall over the years, Stanford a couple of years ago made headlines because they said you couldn't use the word American. It was problematic.
Yeah.
I don't know if you recall that, but they made headlines for that. And then, of course, they shouted down that federal judge. And the DEI dean took to the podium and chided him as well. And that obviously didn't look good for Stanford. And then they have this amazing professor of medicine, Jay Bhattacharya. You know, he had some contrarian COVID views. So they basically, silenced him, abandoned him, criticized him, censored him. I mean, they just have a string of, censorious actions over the years. So finally, enough professors, because, Stanford's supposedly center-right, but professors created this ad hoc free speech committee. And finally, just last week, they passed this, free speech statement. It was going to be a policy, and then they downgraded that just to a statement, right? Because they can't have a policy defending free speech. So now it's just a statement, but supposedly they're going to defend free speech from now on and let, contrarian viewpoints be heard. So one can hope, because we definitely need more of that.
Yeah, listen, I'm with you. And we've had Dr. Jay Bhattacharya on this program a number of times. And it's fascinating that, it's kind of like free speech for me, but not for thee, so often in so many of these college campuses. And I don't think that that's really changed much in the last, 40, 50 years, if not for getting worse. Do you think that there is a movement afoot to make it better?
Yeah, there's a lot of red states that have passed legislation sort of beating back these DEI policies that are really behind a lot of this censorious and attitude and atmosphere where you can't say anything that offends anybody, you can't say anything that hurts anybody's feelings. So thankfully, there is, people have sort of woken up and realized that, DEI has really just created these divisive, oppressive campuses. And that, again, it circles back to what we're seeing here with these pro-Palestinian protesters who are storming buildings and shouting down graduation speakers and, taking over campuses because they feel like, nobody's going to do anything until they get their point across, until they're heard, until there's changes that are made and their demands are met. There's nothing wrong with protesting, but when you take over, shout down, and shut up at the rest of the side, and not to mention the rampant anti-Semitism that is involved in a lot of these protests, that goes too far. So, free speech is great. Protesting is a honored tradition in America, but you can't take away other people's rights to free speech. And that circles back to the gay pride parade in Philly. Let them rock. They were just trying to, celebrate. It's June. Obviously, it's Pride Month. They were just doing their thing. And then here comes the, free Palestine folks who just can't let us have a moment to ourselves this last few months.
Yeah. Jenn Kabbany, editor-in-chief at thecollegefix.com. Let everybody know how they could find you on social media and follow you there.
Yeah, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, X, what it's called. We're on it all. Come find us, follow us. Never a dull moment.
Outstanding. Jenn Kabbany, thank you. You are a gentlewoman, a scholar, and a patriot. I thank you for joining us.
Anytime.
You bet. All right, folks, we're talking about Hunter Biden trial. Will the Secret Service go to jail with Trump? Will they not? We're going to talk about that as well. Doug Burns coming up straight ahead. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
There's more news in your commentary, in your analysis, than there is on the news network.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Hunter Biden arrived at the federal courthouse in Wilmington, Delaware for the start of his trial on felony gun charges. Inside, he took notes during jury selection while First Lady Joe Biden sat in the row behind him. The president's son is charged with making false statements when he brought a gun in October 2018, claiming on a federal form he was not using or addicted to drugs. He's also charged with unlawfully possessing the gun as a drug user. The trial comes less than a year after a plea deal fell apart, with the judge questioning whether the deal shielded Biden from future charges as well. In pretrial court filings, Biden's legal team contends he had been undergoing rehab when he bought the gun and may not have considered himself an addict.
A lot of this case is going to turn on, what some might see as legal parsing about whether he believed he was an addict, whether he was in fact addicted when he checked the box on the form saying that he wasn't addicted.
President Biden issued a statement saying, as the president, I don't and won't comment on pending federal cases. But as a dad, I have boundless love for my son, confidence in him, and respect for his strength. If convicted, Hunter Biden faces up to 25 years in prison.
So Hunter's facing up to 25 years in prison, and of course he is the smartest man that Joe Biden knows. So there's that. Now we have this case that is going to take its course. And let me tell you, this is a brilliant political move, I believe, by Biden, who is a very good retail politician, because had this been delayed, had it not come out around the same time as the Trump trial, it would have looked like there was so much preferential treatment. Now, we've heard about the preferential treatment that there's been in the past with the special counsel that was appointed and all of that stuff, and the special plea deal. However, it's still a good look for, I think, most independents who look at this and say, well, look, they got even Biden's son on trial, Trump's on trial. This is the most fair Justice Department ever. But I want to parse this, as they just said. I want to break it down with somebody who understands this. He's a former chief of the criminal division in New York for the Department of Justice, former assistant United States attorney, federal prosecutor, Doug Burns. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Doug Burns, when you hear this, the jury selection has begun and the trial's about to kick off for the Hunter Biden trial, it's my belief that this stuff is all fake, phony, and fraud. I don't believe this guy ever sees the inside of a jail cell. Maybe I'm overreacting. What say you?
No, I think your analysis is really good. And you're one of the few people who I've heard lay out what I've been thinking, which is the narrative about, two tiers of justice, and they're going after Trump, to the extent that that was actually resonating a little bit. What better political move than to turn around and say, what, are you kidding me? We have the president's son on trial right now. And by the way, break it down a little further, which is quite interesting, and that is that you have this case which completely insulates President Joe Biden, because he's not really involved in this at all. This creates perfect narratives. He was an addict. You have to be sorry for him. His father and stepmother are behind him 100%, and he's a wonderful man now, and we're so proud of him now. Note the convenience, Rich, and I'm chuckling. I can't help it. Note the convenience of the tax case, which has every possibility of bringing Joe Biden's conduct under some kind of lens. All of the money they took in from foreign countries, all of the money they took in from, people at odds with the United States, countries at odds, and that's conveniently now been moved to, and I'm really chuckling now, moved to September. You see that? They're going to try it before the election. No, they're not. That's going to conveniently and miraculously be extended right past the election. Mark my words, okay?
I believe that. I believe that 100%. And, Doug Burns, when you look at this case, at least from my looking at it, and I think we've talked about this a little bit in the past, but I want to make sure anybody who's just tuning in, we're on with Doug Burns. He's been an attorney, he's a defense attorney, 38 years experience, former chief of the criminal division in Long Island, former federal prosecutor. When you look at this and you say, okay, and again, the facts of the case as I know it, and maybe you've reviewed this case and have different facts than I do, but the ones I have are, he had a fight with his girlfriend, bought a gun that he lied on the application, said, no, I don't have a drug problem, but well documented he has the drug problem. And he buys the gun, and then he throws the gun, or she throws the gun in the dumpster of the, or he throws it in the 7-Eleven. She goes to retrieve it. Yeah. Then the Secret Service is there, but they don't know anything. Well, how is this possible?
Okay, here's the fact pattern really quick, and I give you an A on that, not an A+. I'm a hard grader. No, but you had it just about right. I mean, basically what happened was he bought a gun. He claims he just wanted to buy it, maybe use it at a range, et cetera, et cetera. Those around him knew he had drug problems, so she was concerned. She literally threw it in a dumpster, as you said. The one part you omitted, which is not of any huge consequences, that somebody who had a history, seriously, of going through those dumpsters, possibly, collecting cans or bottles, whatever, found the gun, got law enforcement involved, et cetera, et cetera. That's the fact pattern. Under federal law, real quick, it's really 18 U.S.C. 922 and 924 for the home researchers, 922G, I believe it is. He lied on what's called an ATF 4473. That's the form, no big deal. And on that form, it says, are you an unlawful user or addicted to controlled substances, narcotics, et cetera? And he wrote no. That's the technical violation. The second one is really the same thing, but it's a little different because it's like he was untruthful on a form that's required to be maintained by a firearms dealer. Okay, fine. It's sort of a duplicative statute. And then the third one is possession of a firearm by somebody who is either an unlawful user or addicted to narcotics. The first count I mentioned is 0 to 10 years. The second one is 0 to 5 years. The third one is 0 to 10. I do want to say that I have a long-standing pet peeve, with the media. They just cannot help themselves. Not you. You were careful to say he faces up to, but a lot of media, they're like, this individual faces 122 years. They always stack the maximum. But under federal law, we create one sentencing range based on what we call the United States Sentencing Guidelines, okay? And you come up with one range. It's advisory for the judge, and then the judge can do what he or she wants within reason. I've handicapped the guidelines on this case. They're not overwhelmingly high. They're in the vicinity of maybe 2 years, and the judge would either say, look, he was a drug addict, he's turned his life around, he's shown remorse. We're not there yet because we don't know if he will or will not, et cetera. And he could get probation. On the other hand, he could get 18 months, right in there. I am very proud to say, in all seriousness, Rich, I'm not being melodramatic, that, I don't do what the other side does. So I'm not going to jump on here and say this is outrageous conduct and he should get 20 years. Of course you don't. And that's what I respect about you. Right. But MSNBC, CNN, that's what they did in reverse. The Trump case, and I don't want to get into it, was an out-of-time, nonsensical misdemeanor on its best day.
And that's the question I have here, right? So it's my belief that the Trump case, if at all there was some sort of infraction, this
very
was
minor,
a clerical error, right? Some sort
very
of
minor, very misdemeanor on its best day, and it was out of time under the statute of limitations.
Right. Now, is this Hunter Biden thing of lying on this federal form in that same range, or is this more egregious where people go to jail?
No, it's a little more serious. I mean, the Trump case was one of the great scams of all time, seriously, because people who are not initiated in criminal law were completely and totally fooled beyond belief. The reality is the only possible violation in the Trump case was that they mismarked these records. But the point is, the payments were to a lawyer, Michael Cohen, and they marked it legal expenses. I mean, that is hardly the crime of the century. So that was a misdemeanor only. And without getting in the weeds, but I've, been delivering these lines, every day over and over and over for weeks and weeks and weeks. The elevation of it to a felony is not legally viable at all, okay? I can give you a brief explanation, which is that you have to have the intent to commit another crime. There really was no such intent whatsoever. It was so embarrassing, by the way, that they had to literally go to the last day of the trial. Nobody even knew what the other crime was. I mean, it was really a disgrace. So from 30,000 feet for your listeners, the Trump case was on its absolute most serious view of it was that it was a misdemeanor of filing some false business records. That requires, by the way, intent to defraud. Intent to defraud is usually understood to be to defraud the victim out of money or property. I mean, there's a laughably weak...
There's nobody to defraud.
Yeah, laughably weak misdemeanor case. The Hunter Biden case, again, to be proud of this after 38 years. All good lawyers, my colleagues, all of us, our greatest skill, there's just no question about it, is we can tell you the price tag and how serious any cases. Just tell us the facts and we'll tell you. So the Trump thing on a scale of 1 to 10 is like a 2, okay? And the Hunter Biden case is like a 4, you know. And basically, you know, he lied on a gun form. He was a drug addict. He should have said yes, but he wrote no. It is technically a felony level offense. You don't have to stretch and strain, by the way, to make it a felony. It's a legitimate felony, but it's not an overwhelmingly serious one. And there's a lot of mitigation in there that the guy was suffering from drug addiction, okay? So that's how you analyze it fairly. And he should face a sentencing range of like 18 months. Maybe a judge would give somebody a year and a day, or maybe they'd give them probation. It is what it is. But again, these two cases, Alan Dershowitz, you know, I have a lot of...
Before you go there, Doug Burns, I got to take a quick pause, and I'm going to come right back with the thought from Dershowitz. And I also want to get your take on the latest rumors that Trump is going to end up in Rikers Island and that he's going to be jailed there and that the Secret Service may or may not be able to protect him while he's in jail. I want to get your take on that as well. So hold that thought. Folks, we're coming right back with Doug Burns.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. I had somebody. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right?
That's
right. But you're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Considering that this sentencing is likely to occur just days before the start of the convention and months before he's to be the Republican nominee in November, do you think it would be dangerous for the country if Donald Trump were sentenced to jail?
No, I don't think it'll be dangerous for the country. And we have seen Trump urge mass protests outside the courthouse that never materialized. But nevertheless, this is, I think, what Donald Trump is aiming for. This is essentially his threat that if he gets jail time, that he's going to encourage his supporters to rise up. And we saw the very, deadly results of that on January 6th. So I don't think the public is going to respond to that call. I hope we learned something from the awful experience of January 6th.
Now, that is Adam Schiff going on his high horse about how dangerous it would or would not be to put Trump in jail ahead of the RNC convention. Now, earlier I played a clip, and I want to replay it just for the benefit of our guest, Doug Burns, from James Comey, former FBI director on MSNBC, just yesterday, saying, and it wouldn't even be that hard to put Trump in jail. Check this one out.
So a lot of people have suggested that there are a range of factors that would make it difficult to put the system has not been tested in this way. Do you agree with that it would be difficult or nearly impossible for the law enforcement institutions to put him in actual jail?
No, they would just put him in a double wide somewhere out near the fence, out in the grass. And he would eat there, he'd shower there, he'd exercise there, he'd be away, as Danya Perry said, from general population, but it's obviously doable.
So we're going to keep Trump away from general population. We're going to put a double wide on the north lawn of the White House where Trump can live. I mean, I think it's kind of insane, but who knows? There's a piece in Fox News, Doug Burns, that says if Trump goes to prison after a guilty verdict, Secret Service would have to go with him. And it cites this article, this act called Disgraced, the Disgraced Former Protectees Act, being sponsored by Benny Thompson, Congressman Benny Thompson from Mississippi, the ranking Democrat on the House Homeland Security Committee. And it stands for Denying Infinite Security and Government Resources Allocated Towards Convicted and Extremely Dishonorable Former Protectees Act. And the acronym is Disgraced. The whole thing is crazy to me, but it seems to be that they're out there beating the drums to make this happen. What is the likelihood of this happening? I know we don't have precedent per se with a former president, but your thoughts?
No, it's not going to happen. First of all, that legislation proposal is precisely because it's, the Secret Service would literally have to be physically present at any institution, with him. So they figured, we'll throw this Hail Mary to remove it. Voila, that solves that problem. But let me give you a counterintuitive take that I think you, and knowing you as I do, you probably already have been discussing this, but I haven't followed it. Here's the thing. When Judge Juan Merchan, allowed Trump to go to his son's graduation, that was not because he was being nice or being fair. It had nothing to do with that. It was because it would have blown up in his face, Rich, if he didn't let him go, okay? These people aren't stupid, and they're playing political games here with our justice system. That's why I'm so upset about it. But if he had incarcerated him, by the way, over the unconstitutional gag order, same thing, would have blown up in his face. He knew that, by the way, and he knew that Trump sort of owned him on that, okay? And Trump, to his credit, didn't push the envelope, overtly, and I'm glad he didn't, but the point is, there's no way the judge could have put him in prison, and it's the same thing now. If this judge gives him prison time, that punches his ticket right back into the White House. Do you agree with that?
I do, 100%.
So there it is. So now, on the logistics also, first of all, as I said, and I apologize to your audience for being a broken record, this is a low, tiny level misdemeanor on its absolute, worst characterizations. It's a complete and total nothing. Does that have anything to do with politics? I would say this about any of the 8 billion people on this planet if they were the defendant. Who the defendant is, I think that your listeners
should never really matter.
Completely irrelevant. No, totally irrelevant to me, by the way, when I analyze any case. That's why, of course, I'm being fair with the Hunter Biden thing. It's not an overwhelming.
Doug Burns, I'm sorry to do it to you. I got to put you on hold again. We got to take another break, pay some bills, and we're going to come right back to finish your thought. Folks, we're on with Doug Burns. He's going to wrap up on why this whole thing's a nothing burger and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, former federal prosecutor and chief of the criminal division in New York, Doug Burns. Let's wrap up your final thought.
Final thoughts are that politics and criminal law do not mix. The criminal courts should never, ever be used for political purposes, which is what we just saw in New York for the first time in my life, just overuse of a criminal court for a political hit job. And that's why Professor Dershowitz, to tie it up, said that none of these cases should be brought in either direction, and I agree with him.
What's the outcome here? It gets overturned on appeal. It goes to the Supreme Court. Does it happen before Election Day? Your thoughts?
No, it'll be overturned on appeal after the election. No one will care. They achieved their goal. They wanted to tag him with this conviction because you've seen over and over and over this thing, convicted felon. They're just gleeful, calling him that. And again, to use the courts for this purpose, particularly in a ridiculous misdemeanor case which has no real validity, it's very, very troubling what went on. And hopefully it won't happen further too much, and we can get back on the right path. Because the judge really was a disgrace, honestly. I've never seen a judge behave like this, Rich.
Last 30 seconds, Doug Burns. Tell me, this precedent that was set, is this going to be the circus that we see moving forward in life of going after our political opponents?
Well, as I just said, and that's such a good question, two wrongs don't make a right. So while it is tempting, of course, to say, let's indict Biden, I say no political cases like this.
Well said, and I appreciate your brevity. Folks, check out Doug Burns at Doug Burns Law on Twitter. Doug Burns, you're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. I thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it, Rich. Take care.
You bet. Folks, we're coming right back. Open Phone America with me, Rich Valdez. Don't go anywhere. Keep it locked.
from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to hour number 3 of the program. Happy to be with you this evening. We're live, we're national, coming right out of New York City. 833-482-5337-833-4-Valdez is our phone number. If you want to join the late night national town hall conversation, feel free. It's good to be back with all of you guys coast to coast. Looking forward to speaking with our listeners on the West Coast, on the East Coast, everywhere in between. And I want to start off with some headlines. Mexico has elected its new president. Her name is Claudia Sheinbaum. And Claudia Sheinbaum, I believe, identifies as a woman. She's, according to reports, the first woman to be elected president of Mexico. So that's that. Then we've got, what else do we have? We've got El Trompito. He's always in the news. But in particular here, it's Funny Willis. Funny Willis is facing a hearing on potentially being removed from the Trump case. That sounds good to me, considering it's a fake, phony, fraud case that isn't going to go anywhere, in my opinion. And let's see, we got Fauci. Fauci was getting beat up today on Capitol Hill by folks in the House Oversight Committee. We've got some audio on that we're going to play for you. And El Trompito Donaldus Magnus, he says that he will release classified files on JFK, 9/11, and, drumroll, Jeffrey Epstein, if he's elected to a second term in the White House. Listen to this.
To declassify things that everyone's talking about. I know you talked earlier about, I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist. So if you were president, would you declassify, you can answer yes or no to these. Yeah. Would you declassify the 9/11 files?
Yeah.
Would you declassify JFK files?
Yeah. I did a lot of it.
Would you declassify the Epstein files?
Yeah, I would.
Attorney General.
That is Trump on with Rachel Campos Duffy from the Fox channel. And he says, yeah, he would declassify the JFK files, which he's already done some of, the Epstein files, 9/11 as well. All of that classified info, Trump is ready to bring the truth out. And he posted this, I don't know, last year, that he would declassify and unseal all the JFK assassination documents, saying it's been 60 years, time for the American people to know the truth. Some of the Epstein documents were released at the beginning of the year in relation to the Virginia Giuffre versus Ghislaine Maxwell lawsuit, revealing connections to former President Bill Clinton, magician David Copperfield, and Stephen Hawking. Now, as far as I know, Stephen Hawking is the really smart guy that was in a wheelchair, among others. Witness testimony from the documents also confirmed that Trump never visited Epstein's island, nor did he have contact with any underage girls. During the same interview, Trump said that he would be okay with being sentenced to jail in the New York City falsified business records case. Trump was found guilty on all 34 counts on Thursday and is set to be sentenced on July 11th, just days before the Republican National Convention. So 7/11 is the big day. Now, I know some of my friends who like to observe folks on the internet that go by the title independent researcher. And it's good to do independent research. I think it's a great thing. But some of them just really go out in the weeds. And by the weeds, I mean, when we go outside of the lines, when you color outside of the lines, it's difficult to take those people seriously. And what I mean by that is this country was founded by a bunch of men that were influenced by thinkers from the Enlightenment. And if you read their writings, it's clear where these ideas come from, right? The idea of natural law, the idea of liberty, and there's a bunch of them. You know, Bastiat, Montesquieu, Alexis de Tocqueville, right? And when you even read passages of these things, it very enlightening stuff, and it helps you understand their mindset in why they wrote and drafted what they wrote and drafted, and even the debate over it. If you look at some of the historical context, right, between the Jeffersonian school of thought and the Madisonian school of thought. And to me, this is a very fascinating conversation. I read a book many years ago called Original Intent by David Barton, and it was what piqued my interest to really start trying to understand the Constitution better. And then I found this great radio host that was on the weekends on WABC in New York City, and then he went big time and was on at 6 p.m. every night, a guy named Mark Levin. And he was a former chief of staff in the Reagan White House with Attorney General Ed Meese, and he was spot on with so much of this stuff. And I learned so much listening to his show, eventually working on the show. And I say all of that to say is our founding in America has certain fundamental truths. And the idea of the United States becoming a military junta, or the notion that people in this country are actively hoping that the military, quote unquote, steps in at some point for anything, is so foreign to what this country stands for. It's crazy. Yet there are people out there that are saying, no, the military's in control. The white hats are doing. Listen, I don't care what color hat you wear. I really don't. I want the good guys to win, but not by cheating. Right? Nobody wants anybody to cheat. Nobody wants to violate the Constitution so that we can say we won. Because again, if that's what we do to win, we're destroying what's worth anything, our country, our Constitution, the rule of law, in the process. We can't destroy the most valuable thing we have and become exactly like the bad guys in order to beat the bad guys. That's the simplest way I can put it. So, yes, I'm on the record saying, no, there's no military taking over of the justice system. We're not going to have civilians under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. That is for military folks. And the Department of Justice, as corrupt as it may be, and the Constitution and the laws of civil procedure and all that stuff comes into play for civil and criminal cases that are for civilians. And really, that's that simple. And if you disagree, give me a call. I mean, I'm happy to have that discussion. But wow. Anyway, I want to get to your phone calls. I see we've got calls from Arizona, from California, from Chicago, from Delaware, from Montana, from Idaho, from Wisconsin, and more coming in. I see the lines flashing. 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. I want to go to Archie, Ventura, California, KVTA. Go right ahead, Archie. You're on with Rich Valdez. Welcome. Archie going once. Archie going twice. Do we have Archie? Archie has disappeared with Veronica. Archie, if your phone gets fixed, feel free to give us a call. If you can find an open line, happy to chat with you. Let us continue. Let's go to Pat, Sedona, Arizona. Go right ahead, my friend.
Hey, you know what? Archie's probably with Jughead behind the building.
That's funny.
Rick, I love how you told us all about the Palestinians taking on the gay pride parade. Oh, man, that is so funny. Because you know what's going to happen? Those Palestinian, whatever they are going to get their asses kicked by dudes wearing skirts. Man, it's good. It's going to be something. It's going to be something. They are going to be outmatched. Those people are going to start swinging. I tell you that. Woo, man. But, you know, coming down to it all, it's a well-played plan if Trump, you know, is organized this trial like it is. I just think it's played into his hands, you know, and it's kind of like gifts that the Democrats are giving him. Because every time they may like him to look bad, everybody comes running to Trump's side. Hence all the money he's been getting. Tons and tons of money. And I'm going to tell you something. Out here in this country, people don't have that much money to give. But when they do, it really is something. You know, the normal guy who's supposedly for Trump. I think a lot of intellectuals are now for Trump, or they're just so upset with Biden and his Democratic cronies and these severe leftists that are in charge of very important parts of our country. I think it's insanity, but I mean, I don't know. These are going to be wild 5 weeks. Wild 5 weeks. That's all I can say. The next 5 weeks are going to be fantastic. Well, I hope no violence happens. Not that kind of fantastic, but fantastic. Like, you're going to see things you've never seen before in this country. And I think people are waking up. I prayed for people to wake up. I've been doing it for 2 years during COVID and everything. I'm saying, people wake up and see what's happening, and it's happening. I just hope people can hold.
What do you think is happening, Pat? That people are realizing that the system is not what they thought it was, and that Trump is not really as bad of a dude as the media has painted him to be?
I think a little bit of both of that. I think that people are really waking up to see how bad our legal system is. Gosh, I have federal judges in my family, and I want to call them and talk to them, but I know what I'll get is they're going to just not want to talk about it, so I don't want to bother them with it. But, man, they've got to be rolling in their sleeps because the system is being torn apart. That judge that Trump had, oh, my gosh, all the constitutional law that he broke. And, there was 24 judges that they picked the pool from. How did he get in there? I mean, it's all politics. Everybody sees it. And what's really neat, last thing I want to say, really, really neat. My mom's from New York. She's from Manhattan. And you know what? She says, a Republican will never take New York. And I say, Mom, maybe someday. And I'm going to tell you what. The Trump being 1 point out right now is something. I tell you, these New Yorkers.
I think it's 7 points, but again, single digit margin. And you know what's interesting, Pat, that I think a lot of people lose sight of, that New York City, had a Republican mayor for 2 terms, Rudy Giuliani. He almost won the first time he ran against David Dinkins. He lost by a slim margin and came back and won and then was reelected again. And then Michael Bloomberg ran as a Republican twice and won, and then made himself an illegal 3rd term running as a Democrat, and he got elected for that. And that was really the beginning of the end. That gave way to Bill de Blasio, who I like to call Bill El Bobo de Blasio. And then, of course, now you have elite Eric Adams. But what's interesting about New York City is Trump today, conservative Republican, New York City. Sean Hannity, right, radio host extraordinaire, he's out of New York. There are plenty of people that are from New York that are very conservative in their politics, I should say, and it shouldn't be a shock to anybody. So I think that the message of conservatism is, kind of taking its toll on New York City, and I'm hopeful to see what happens when Election Day rolls around. Pat in Sedona, Arizona, listening live on richvaldez.com. Thank you for the call, brother. Good to hear your voice. And I agree with you. I think El Trompito is gaining some steam, full speed ahead for sure. Folks, we're going to come right back to the rest of your calls and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Congratulations on just an amazing show. I know you've worked so hard in the industry, and nobody deserves it more than you do. So I'm happy to see you really succeeding here. It's awesome.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. And I'm looking at a bunch of things that are concerning, right? So I'm going to have to enlist the support of some of our economists to come and help me understand some of this. But a couple of crazy headlines. And by the way, the phone number is 833-482-5337, the number 4, my last name, Valdez, with an S. And the headline that grabbed my attention earlier, really eye-grabbing headline. I don't even know how many. This is 1, 2, 3, so I think that's a billion. $517 billion in unrealized losses will hit the U.S. banking system. FDIC says that 63 lenders are on the brink of insolvency. Now, does that mean that our economy is collapsing? I don't think it means quite that. I think it means that our economy is weakened because despite the dollar being the strongest instrument globally, the reality is that it's losing some of its buying power because of inflation. And that puts us in a tough spot where the BRICS nations and others want to eat our lunch. And that's been going on literally, I don't know, for 28, 30 years or so. And probably before then. It's just as far as I know it's been going on. And that is concerning. It is concerning because of other headlines, right? Other headlines like this one in Fox Business. Orange juice makers consider using alternative fruit as prices skyrocket. Well, why are they skyrocketing? There's a global shortage of oranges. This is sending prices soaring, and it's prompting some of the orange juice manufacturers to figure out another way to make orange juice. Now, of course, they're probably going to turn to Bill Gates and ask for orange peel, right? And I don't mean like literally the peel of the orange. I mean like that chemical product he made called apple peel, where he takes apples and other things and creates this fake fruit, the same way he's made fake steak and fake everything else. Global prices for oranges hit $3.68 per pound back in April. That's up 33% from $2.76, which was the figure just about a year ago. And that's according to the IMF, International Monetary Fund data. This also is a stunning 210% increase from January 2021, just before the inflation crisis really started to blow up. So there are three main factors driving the soaring price of orange juice, and it's, according to this guy, Ted Jenkin, he says it's drought, disease, and demand. So I want to get your thoughts on this and more as we get to your calls. Again, the phone number is 833-482-5337. I also want to talk about Hunter Biden, your thoughts on the Democrats and what's going on with the trial of Hunter Biden, the trial of El Trompito, Donaldus Magnus, the 45th president of these United States, as well as the Hamas, pro-Hamas protesters arguing with the LGBTQ parade goers and everything else that we've been discussing tonight. So, folks, stick with me. If you're on hold, we're going to get to you right now, straight ahead. Don't go anywhere. We're going to go to Ohio, Montana, Delaware, where else? Chicago, California, Wisconsin, and California again. We got a lot of calls tonight. We're coming your way. Don't go anywhere. Rich Valdez.
America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdez with you, live from New York. Happy to be back. 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. And, you know, I took a couple of days off this week and this past week, and it's actually the longest amount of time I've taken off in radio since I started in radio. And that was pretty remarkable, and I couldn't wait to get back. Anyway, I want to continue with your calls. We're going to get to your calls, and of course, some more interesting conversation. A couple of headlines that I want to share before I forget, because there's a lot today. Listen to this. 2 fetuses were found on a public bus in Baltimore over the weekend. Wow. Let's see what else we've got here. Israel confirms the death of 4 more hostages in Gaza. A juror in a COVID fraud case was dismissed after receiving a bag with $120 in cash. I would like to receive such a bag. Number 3, Bob Menendez files as an independent in his bid for his Senate seat because his friends, the Democrats, have kicked him out. Governor Phil Murphy's wife, Tammy Murphy, is going to be running as the Democrat nominee. And, of course, Fauci ripped to shreds during the hearing on Capitol Hill today. Also, McCarthy's replacement, former Speaker McCarthy, was replaced by Vince Fong. He was sworn in today. Now, I want to get to your calls. Let's go. We found Archie. I think he's in Ventura, California on KVTA. Archie, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez. Welcome.
Thanks again, Rich, for taking my call. I enjoy your polite banner and your firm dealing with the facts, and your guests. You have some excellent guests that always educate me on something or another. I enjoyed hearing a little bit about the inside baseball on the legal profession tonight, but there was one thing that kind of stood out to me. What about Hunter? Is he really rehabilitated? What about the large quantities of white powder that were found in the family quarters in the White House? I don't think it's the First Lady that's snorting coke, or although it may be Crazy Joe, but my money would be on Hunter. I think
yeah. No, go ahead. Finish your thought.
Well, does he need to be drug tested before, if he's found guilty, or even before during the trial?
Yeah, a good point. Honestly, that would be something I think that the folks in this trial should ask, right, and say, hey, let's give him let's check it out. Now, I have to say, I think that Hunter Biden has made some strides and is clean. And any interview I've seen with him in many recent years, he seems drug-free to me, right? I think his ABC interview that he did a couple of years back, from what I can see, the guy looks like a straight arrow in terms of drug use. Does that mean he's telling the truth all the time? I don't know. I'm not going to presume he's a liar, because honestly, I think everything he's said has made sense, right? I think he's said that he did have a drug problem, that he was sorry for what he'd done, and blah, 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 right? So I think he's a very apologetic guy. And this was why, I mean, if you listen to some old tapes of mine, I've always said, I don't think it's a winning strategy to go after Hunter Biden being a crackhead. I just didn't, because I felt too many people would sympathize. I also felt like it was a bad idea to go after Joe Biden as a crooked politician. That's fine. Like I do, you can make fun of him a little bit. I think that's fine too. But to go after him as, he forgets everything and he is, like an Alzheimer's patient or something like that, I always felt that would not resonate with a lot of Americans, because they would think, well, I have a grandpa like that. And even me, I oftentimes, Joe Biden reminds me a lot in his mannerisms as my dad, who had a brain injury, and Biden's had brain aneurysms, I believe, and surgeries to rectify them or prevent them. And when I see things that it's very similar to my father, who had a brain injury. And it's not a sympathy thing for me. For me, it's more like my dad also had brain injury related dementia. And I also see that same behavior coming out of Biden. So for me, and again, I'm not a doctor and I can't diagnose the guy, but I can look at him and think, man, he's not in good shape. The same way I look at Hunter Biden and I say, looks pretty clean to me. But I wouldn't be opposed to that. I think if it's something that, they may want to establish, it probably only works in his favor, right? For him to say, you know what, test me, go ahead. Test me right now. And if he's clean, it'll make it look like, I still deserve to have my gun license and blah, blah, blah. And these charges should be dropped, or at least, sentenced at the lowest possible penalty. So I think that would help him, but I wouldn't be opposed to that anyway. I don't think this is the big case for Hunter Biden. The real big case is the FARA violations, where he was acting as a foreign agent. And that's the real big deal. But they're trying to, bait and switch with the gun charge. Archie in Ventura, California, listening on KVTA. Thank you for your call. I'm glad you called back. I enjoy the conversation with you, and thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it. Let's go to Diane. Diane's in Chicago, Illinois, listening online to our big affiliate WGN in Chicago. We're on a little bit later there. Diane, go right ahead. What are your thoughts on the pro-Hamas protesters fighting with the LGBTQ parade goers?
Oh, well, that wasn't what I was going to talk about, but I didn't hear much about that, but I'm thinking, well, that's sort of nothing
I'm
that
sorry.
interesting.
It says here that you had some comments about the LGBTQ protesters. What did you want to make a comment about?
He mentioned the producer.
What do you want to mention, Diane?
Him. Well, I was going to talk about the Trump trial again.
Sure.
What is interesting for anybody who's interested in the law, and then of course politics as well. But I think it will be be overturned. But the thing is, Cohen shouldn't have been the main star witness, because if you read Cohen's book, which I just finished, I just got it and read it. And all the convolutions and all of these slimy characters and the oligarchs, the Russian people. And Cohen feels like he should take a bath after that, because in his book is so remorseful of what he did. But in the end of the book, its implication when he was in prison, sort of implying that it was Trump that got him, but it wasn't the hand of Trump that was putting him in his troubles. There was a breach happening between him and Trump, and somebody wanted that divide. And then the trial made it look like he was so done in by Trump, and that's not the whole story, But
right. And who is responsible for this chasm that's being created?
Well, there's the rub, as they say. Well, it is sort of that deep state type of thing. I don't know. You can't.
I see. Right. It was the prosecutors. I get that, and I've seen that too. I'm thinking you're probably right in many ways on that, where they came to Cohen and said, "Hey, look, you're going to flip on Trump. We're going to drive a wedge in between the two of you, or we're going to imprison your wife." And same thing they did to General Michael Flynn. And this is a typical technique of the FBI. And I think you're onto something, Diane. There might be a part 2 to Cohen's book, maybe even a movie that kind of describes it. Diane in Chicago, Illinois, listening on WGN. Thank you for your call. I appreciate it. Always good to hear your voice, Diane. And let me take a quick pause right here. We're coming right back for Wilmington, Delaware. We got our buddy Doc standing by. We're going to go to you. Evergreen, Montana, Boise, Idaho, Racine, Wisconsin, and more. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. No hair, no care, and live on the air, it's Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. And again, I want to give a special welcome to all of the Super Talk stations in Mississippi. Big shout out to TeleSouth, who's joined us, a dozen stations. You got 94.3 in Corinth, 93.7 in northern Mississippi, 101.9 in Tupelo, Golden Triangle, 100.9. You got 96.9, the Delta, 103.3 in Meridian, 97.3 in Jackson, 99.3 in Laurel, Hattiesburg, 97.3. Is that Hattiesburg? Forgive me. 97.3. Southwest Mississippi, 102.1. Pike County, 93.5. And the Gulf Coast of Mississippi, 103.1. Again, big welcome to Super Talk Mississippi, to the America at Night family with me, Rich Valdez. Happy to be with you, adding these dozen new stations and looking to continue growing. And I want to go to Racine, Wisconsin, WTMJ, another great affiliate. Let's go to Randy. Go right ahead, Randy.
Hi, Rich.
Hey.
Hi, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay. Hey, first of all, stay healthy, stay strong. I get more information from you at night from midnight till 3 in the morning because we're on delay here. I get more from you than anywhere else. I have a couple of points I want to make. The Democrats, they like to say the first thing out of their mouth is convicted felon Donald Trump was in a meeting today. It's all this convicted felon. Well, you're a believer. I'm a believer. Our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, died a convicted felon. Putin's adversary, who was just his political, his political opponent, he died a convicted felon. You know, I mean, and Jesus was innocent. This guy was innocent. He was just a political opponent. And my third point I've been wanting to say for weeks is this Fannie, and I'm not making a mistake here, Fannie Willis, because she's busy with her Fannie.
It's the comedy writes itself.
The Fannie Willis and her man. If you have a solid case in Georgia, and your case is really good, and you have all this information, and it's solid, what are you doing going to the White House? And the Democrats say none of this is coming through the White House. Do they think we're that stupid?
They do, Randy. They think they, in their opinion, they know we're that stupid. And all good points. And thank you for your kind words, by the way. But yeah, listen, I agree with you. And I think this is the oldest play in the book. The oldest play in the book is framing this person and having this false persecution. And you're right. We saw it with Jesus. We've seen it historically a number of times. And it's unfortunate, but it's there. And it's as old as the day is long, and I think it's not going anywhere anytime soon. But we have to make sure that we don't fall for it. We don't take the bait, that we're aware of our past, that we're able to use historical context in our analysis of what's going on in the day-to-day of our lives. And, you know, while we talk about all sorts of things, right? You know, we'll talk about some off-the-wall topics, but we can't lose sight of the things that really matter, because I realize that it's a lot. It's a lot for me sometimes to come here and talk about this stuff for 3 hours every night. I love this stuff. I really do. I follow politics. It's kind of what I do. I used to work in government, but I can also say it's also exhausting, right? It's very exhausting, especially if, let's say you're a mom, a working mom that or a grandma, you know, or a grandpa, you know, just somebody that's, you know, close to retirement, or maybe you're retired and now you have a part-time job. And the last thing you want to do is just hear about how horrible things are in America every single day, day in and day out. And I get that. And I point these things out not to be the doom and gloom guy, but to really to make sure that people are up to speed on what's happening and aware of what's going on in America at night and everything that went on during the day, so we can talk about it at night. Because ultimately, if we're not aware and if we're not taking action on those things, who is? Who's going to do the work? And I think that's where the American people come in. So, Randy, thanks again for everything. I appreciate it. Big shout out to WTMJ Racine, Wisconsin. I want to continue. I want to go to Doc. Doc in Wilmington, Delaware. If Trump is in jail, oh boy, ay bendito. Doc, what say you, sir? WDE.
Well, I want to make a quick statement. Number one, I missed you like heck when Dom was on, but Dom was a wonderful guest host. You and I go back years.
Yes, sir.
When you were subbing on WPHT 1210, the Big Talker of Philadelphia, if you remember correctly.
Oh, yeah.
You took my calls. And
Absolutely.
I said at the time, this young man is going to replace Jim Bohannon, and I was right. Now, to my point.
Thank you.
I am making the rounds of pubs, restaurants, and diners in Delaware to get the pulse of what the people of Delaware feel. I'm hearing constantly from people that are neutral on Trump or pro-Trump. They're not even pro-Trumpers.
Right.
But they're not for Biden. That if President Trump is harmed in jail, by emphasis, they're going to take to the streets. I'm not saying that's the right thing to do. I fear for this country, and I fear for the division that Biden is causing. The first straw that broke the camel's back was the December 6th defendants. Now this garbage with President
January
Trump.
6th. Yes.
I fear for the Republican. I want your thoughts on that.
Well, listen, I always fear for our republic, because I think every time you've got a camel's back, like you just mentioned. You've got a camel's back, and a straw can break it. And I realize that. And every time we have this erosion of justice, where we redefine what our legal system should be doing, and we allow these types of political prosecutions to exist, occur, and continue, we're effacing the system, right? It's becoming thinner and thinner and thinner and more flimsy. And we need a robust, strong, solid legal system. So, and I don't know that you can't get this back, right? You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. You can't get unpunched in the face. And that's what's happening here. I will say this. I'm not going to go as far as saying if something happens to Trump in jail, because it's my hope that doesn't happen. And I do agree with you that there would be some sort of conflict. I don't know what kind of conflict. I don't know if it's, people getting locked up for protesting, people getting locked up because they're called domestic terrorists because they want to take to the streets, people saying, oh, it's going to be another January 6th, lock them all up, calling martial law and just locking up anybody with a red hat. Who knows? People, kicking down my door, trying to shut me up and get me off a mic. Nothing would surprise me. What I will say is if that were to happen, I would think it would probably be appropriate, right, for people to be up in arms. I'm not calling for violence or civil war or anything like that. I'm saying it would be appropriate to say that's wrong and for people to protest, because that is our First Amendment right to protest. But I don't believe, for many reasons, I just think people are not very violent, number one. Number two, I think there's been so many occasions for people to really be up in arms and get angry. But for what they say happened on January 6th, we've never seen it happen. And we know that in January 6th, there were people like, what was that undercover guy's name? I'm forgetting now, the guy. Anyway, you guys all know who I'm talking about. The guy with the red MAGA hat was FBI informant, just recently got sentenced. Anyway, the bottom line here is I do believe that we are a very civil society. We're also a very pacifistic society, Doc. And while I think we have a fight in us, I don't think we're there at this point. I think Americans are still very civilized, and it's my hope that truth prevails and that the best man wins. And I think that's really going to happen in this case. Doc, you're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. Thanks for always listening to the show and for calling in over the years. I appreciate it. Coming right back to your calls and more, Montana, Idaho, and everybody else. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez.
All right, the name I was thinking of was Ray Epps. How could I forget Ray Epps? He was the old guy with the MAGA hat. I'm sure there was a lot of old guys with MAGA hats, but January 6th trying to incite a whole bunch of issues. Anyway, let's get to the phones. Evergreen, Montana, KOFI. Frank, what's up, brother?
Hi. Yeah, I believe this is a witch hunt to get Trump. I mean, only in New York City, of course, where it's the Puritan capital of New York there, and it's it's his first offense. He should get a deferred imposition of sentence, and I think leave it as that.
Yeah, I think you're right. First offense, it might be a good way to go. Instead, they're talking about building, James Comey's talking about building a double-wide jail cell on the White House lawn. You've got Adam Schiff saying, no, it wouldn't be dangerous at all. We should be putting him in jail, calling him a convicted felon, and et cetera, et cetera. And again, I guess that's the term that they wanted to come up with because they framed the guy, in my opinion. Anyway, Frank, Evergreen, Montana, KOFI, thanks for the call. Big shout-out to Boise, Idaho, WDAY. No, that's KBOI, actually. Paul in Boise, Idaho. And folks, I'm back with you again tomorrow. Good to be back. Hasta la próxima. Until the next time, America, take care, good night, and God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdez.